This is Critical Nonsense, our high-lowbrow show about culture, science, and tech. This week, special guests Chloe Sutter and Claire Choi ask us about the trend mill.
Woo!
My mama don't like you, and she likes everyone. This is what a Joey sounds like. And this is what an executive producer and gremlin motor, Jess Vander, sounds like.
Hi, this is Jess. Gremlin voter or gremlin motor?
Motor. With a D, not a T.
Got it?
Yeah.
Not sort of a voting situation on the gremlin front.
Yeah, and a grand occasion, we have returned to having extra special guests. Not just one, but two this week. We have we have Mob Wife and special guest Chloe Sutter. This is what Chloe sounds like. There it is.
Hello.
And we have Trader Joe's tote bag holder and Angel, Claire Choi.
Angel, I feel so honored. Hello.
I just added an extra one. I added an angel in there.
Honestly,
you have like
deserve
two.
It.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Well, we have no housekeeping, but Chloe, Claire, and I have been having this like ongoing discussion in chats for months, and they're coming on to talk to us about what they have in mind. So the floor is yours.
Exciting. Thanks for having us. I guess getting started, the way all this came to be, I was waiting outside a popular bar in Soho back in, let's say January, optimal people watching. And I noticed walking in and out the bar, every single woman had on a fur coat. I don't think there was a single person who walked in or out, including the two bouncers outside, I should say, all in fur jackets.
On theme.
Really?
Fitted.
Everyone got the memo. And with that, I think it was probably no less than 24 hours in advance. I'd be shocked if it was 48. I'd seen a TikTok about the clean girl aesthetic being out. So slicked hair, classic, tailored, the row, no longer cool, no longer trending. Instead, we've pivoted towards the mob wife, fur coats, messy eyeliner, this like bold gold jewelry. And it was alive and well in the streets of New York, which... coming back to the office sparked quite a conversation around the trend cycle, kind of the overwhelming presence, the pace at which they're coming, and how fast we're seeing people attach themselves to it. So we've dubbed it the trend mill, and that's what we're here to chat about today.
Yeah, and I think we're bringing this to the podcast and you, Joey, and Jess, holders of knowledge, because of how conflicted we
Holders
feel.
of knowledge.
Holders of knowledge. Because of how conflicted we feel about it. Chloe and I think, have talked endlessly about this, and we would consider ourselves very active participants and observers of this trend mill. And I'd almost go as far to say that we are both very chronically online.
Exposing us,
I feel
Claire.
guilty about it, but it's okay. And I think recently we've recognized that things can go a little too far when it comes to trends. So we want to ask you, what does this trend mill mean, and what does it say about us as people? And Joey, kind of like you always say, what is the bad thing? Like, how bad is the trend mill really? But yeah, that's what we want to talk about today.
Man. How bad should you feel is such like a heavy here. Like, what if I just came in and I was just like, you both should feel very bad about yourselves. You are bad people. No, we like, you were generous. We had the trend mill, but then I also threw in lemming culture, which was not generous and maybe like not a helpful or constructive way to talk about it. But part of the reason why I was like so interested in it was the social pressure I felt that was being created, that like that aspect of it I don't think anyone should feel guilty about, but the social pressure that's created to be like, oh no, like what if you showed up to that club like in clean girl aesthetic wearing your like new
No.
new jacket from the row, and everyone's like, ew, gross, you're so dumb, like that's not what we're doing. Like the sort of like passe aggressive dynamic, which is like a term that we coined here like some years ago. I think maybe Alexandre had come up with it, like the idea of like as soon as something is old, that like just like be aggressively telling people that they're dated. It just feels like unfair and puts you in this sort of like constant need to be like, what is the new thing? Because if I go out, am I going to then like receive like judgment, or will I feel shame as a result of like not running fast enough on the treadmill? And like that aspect, like I don't think anyone should feel bad, but I feel like this like social dynamic can't be good.
Totally. I also think what Claire and I have talked about quite a bit is, I guess for context, I am a proud owner of a, I suppose, faux fur jacket to some extent that was gifted to me around the holidays. And Claire is the proud owner of a Trader Joe's mini tote bag, as we've already revealed. And we were talking about the fact that neither of us really want to wear them. I was gifted it. It was not, I didn't choose it. I was pre-mob wife aesthetic, let's say. And then we were talking about why we didn't want to wear it, because it almost subscribed us to an aesthetic or a trend or a group of people that felt like it was making a bigger statement than just wearing a jacket or carrying a tote bag.
I mean, this is a thing with like luxury bags too. It's like either you actually paid that much, or you got a knockoff, but it's because you want it to look like you paid that much. So regardless, it's meant to be signaling kind of something the same. It's interesting.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy because I feel like, I don't know if you guys heard the story of this kid getting bullied for having an off-brand Stanley Cup. Like, is it really that serious?
That's so sad.
I know, and it just breaks my heart because I think back to when I was in middle school, pre-TikTok, and the way that I felt like I really belonged was by like wearing Converse with my friends, and we'd like draw hearts on each other's with Sharpie at lunch. And at the time, the store Brandy Melville had just like totally blown up, and as much as I was in my middle school, like, I don't want to wear what everybody else wears, I was like, this is a nice cardigan and I really want to wear it. And it made me feel like I was part of a community. And I can't imagine being at that age now. And every week it's changing sort of like what I need to be wearing, what I need to know. And how do you even keep up as you're like trying to figure out who you are as a young person? And we have sort of the luxury of getting to say no to certain things, like knowing what's happening in the world and choosing to subscribe to a trend, not subscribe to a trend. Like, I just don't think young people have the same luxury, or I guess like middle schoolers, elementary schoolers. But it's tough.
Well, it's interesting because, you know, even at the introduction of this topic, the first thing I think of is like, oh, well, friends and using certain items, especially exclusive ones, as a signal of certain class or social status, or, you know, something that has always been a thing. That doesn't feel like the thing that's new. But the thing that almost feels new is the pace, and actually maybe even the accessibility. Like, there's something about some fancy name brand bag or jewelry that it's like it is unattainable for most people, and that's the point. The problem is a Stanley Cup, like, actually possible. Like, that's in play. And so then but at a certain frequency, and you know, like, it's just so interesting how that butts up against a culture now of also trying to a culture now, I think, globally, of also expressing yourself and like not caring about what everyone else is doing. It's just interesting to see that those things are butting up against each other, of like, well, there still must be that like innate desire of like wanting to be part of the thing, and now maybe I can, and so I have to keep up in some way.
Yeah, there's the the one addition that I would add to like get those criteria is like the dynamic of being seen as like a key driver, because so many of the social media platforms are being driven through visual media. And so, right, like the mob wife aesthetic or the tote bag or whatever is like about being seen with that thing. And obviously like that was always a component of status, but like the visual dynamic of it is exacerbated. But I would love to hear like Chloe and Claire too. Like the elephant in the room here is TikTok. And I think like on a fundamental level, part of this is like a feature, not a bug. Like the thing that made TikTok unique from a technological perspective was that it was built on a breaking news algorithm, not a social graph algorithm. And so like those arcs of like what is the new fastest thing and whatever, there is like a pressure from the technology itself to be like, what is the next new thing? Because that is what it was designed to do, like to create that urgency and acceleration of, you know, bring us closer to a news cycle than just like a keeping up with your friends cycle, you know?
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, I feel like even with clean girl aesthetic, mob wife aesthetic, these are like these broad overarching, I don't know, style, if you want to call it. So it's almost like this sweeping difference from shifting out clothing in your closet, but there are even little ways that are, and you have to note the irony of it. Blueberry milk nails, strawberry milk nails, like it's a blue manicure, it's a pink manicure. And we've now like curated this aesthetic and identity that changes by the week, by the day. And it's like at its core, it is Essie blue nail polish. It is nothing more than that. And it is wild. And Claire and I have been talking about it quite a bit, which is like, there's an element to how fast things come that also keeps you chained to your phone. And we were saying like, it makes us better at our jobs to know what's happening, to understand the trends, to see what's like popping up every single day, which keeps you so chained to coming back to it in a sense. And there was the Duolingo social media manager. She is like an icon in the social media world. I'm going to butcher this, but I think upon graduating, she had started at Duolingo and had grown the account by thousands, millions, like almost instantaneously. This like crazy shoot to social media stardom, all via this Duolingo bird, character, parrot. I don't totally know what it is. And she wrote this article recently. Owl, I think so.
I think it's an owl.
It's a green owl.
It's a green owl?
Yeah.
But she wrote this article recently on LinkedIn. I believe she's on her second sabbatical from work, because she said that like this constant pressure to constantly be on top of the trends, to understand what's happening, to have the newest TikTok noise, to just be in touch, has almost like forced her out of the present, where even if she's with friends at a dinner, like she cannot fully detach from the algorithm because it's so intertwined in her day-to-day and like her personal success.
Yeah, I've seen it is tough. Sorry to this owl. When I think about things like blueberry milk nails, or there's always something like that, I question like, is it so bad to call something like my shade of nail polish something really cute and fun and exciting? I don't think it's a bad thing. And I see so much content lately of how like I miss TikTok in 2020, or like I miss what it was before, when it was this like exciting creative place where people were sharing dances and like sharing the crafts that they were making during lockdown. And I can't lie that I also miss what it was, even though what it was only, 3-4 years ago now. And it's just tough because now that they've gone like 100% into TikTok Shop, you like can't escape the products. You can't escape the fact that my entire For You page is like riddled with ads, riddled with the same ad for this like cervical spine pillow that I did end up buying. So it's just, it's really tough. And Chloe, like you're saying, when we think about like our work, I'm constantly doing research and whatnot on TikTok, and I think we've learned how to leverage it in a way that works best for us in the projects that we're on. But I just sometimes want to like turn it off, and I find myself out of habit always reaching for the same app. It's always the number one app when you like go down to the search bar and try to find an app, and I've been struggling with trying to figure out how to navigate this on my own because I don't want to be chained to my phone, and it's complicated.
Yeah. Yeah, it doesn't feel like any of those individual things are bad. People always did that. That was like inside jokes and whatever, like calling it blueberry milk nails or something. But then like the sort of dynamics of memetics are like accelerated in that situation, right? Like if the expectation is trying to turn everything into a meme, then like it becomes the objective, right? Like where you're like, I want to be early as part of a meme, so then you're just like copying like random behaviors, and like some will take off and some won't. But you're like, blueberry milk nails became a meme, and I like had my like fingers on TikTok earlier, and whatever, like McDonald's purple milkshake, like grimace deaths or whatever that one was, like, you know. But if you're trying to participate in the meme as like what you're creating, as opposed to like creating a thing for its own purpose, then that's like the lemming culture bit, right?
Well, this is also, I think, tied to the point you made, Claire, about like the distinction between your role as just consumer to have to be a participant in that, like, in whatever, serving that objective, versus in a professional context for us needing to be aware of what's going on in the world and with consumers, or other, like if you were a marketing manager or social media manager, like, yeah, maybe you have actual business reasons or incentives to need to be setting such objectives, right? And I'm curious if you have thoughts about like where that line is.
It's hard. And I was just gonna ask you guys the same question of like, how do you keep yourselves sane? Maybe both in your personal life and in your work life, of like the constant noise of TikTok, of Instagram, or whatever platform you feel is maybe like taking up all of your time. I don't know. I don't think I have the answer, and I think that's why we brought the question to discuss. I found in my personal life how I try to maybe stay offline a bit is to like stop taking photos of everything for the sake of wanting to share it. I think it's different when I'm like texting a photo to a friend of like this cool art piece that I saw versus like posting it on my Instagram story, because I want people to think of me as somebody who like goes to museums. Like, it's so much about retraining your brain to sort of, at least for myself personally, to not think of everything as a moment that I need to be posting. And for a long time, and how I grew up with social media and Instagram and whatnot, was for the sake of sharing and being so excited to share. And I think it's changing now for me in a way where I'm like, I don't want to be having this urge to grab my phone every time there's a moment. And I don't know. I'm not sure how you guys feel about it.
There's the Jonathan Haidt book that has come out recently has been like a big topic of conversation, and we've talked about some of his earlier work around like values and things in the past. I think it is also interesting that like in this process where he was like once like, oh, he's an academic and he's talking about these ideas, it's now he's being like labeled as like a conservative academic or whatever, because he's like talking about the ills of like social media, which is interesting. And maybe he is, like, I don't know enough about him or his perspective, but like the earlier work didn't necessarily come across in that way, maybe. But one of the things in his recent book was like a survey question that they had done in one of the experiments around asking kids like, what would you need to be paid to like go off TikTok for a month? And they set some price that would be similar to like a social value, you know, some other thing that they had to give up for a month. It had some, like they needed to be paid some amount of money. But then if they were asked, what would you need to be paid to get your whole school to go off TikTok for a month? They were actually willing to pay money to like remove it, so that they felt the pressure to be on it, so they couldn't get rid of it. If you told them everyone else was on it, but you can't be for a month, then that had like a cost. But they were willing to like absorb the cost if no one was on it. Like they don't want to be on it. They feel like a need. And so like that question, like some of what you were talking about like feels like a compulsion. Like for myself, I like got off Facebook and I got off Instagram because for different reasons. Like Facebook was like getting me into these like debates with people where I was like, we're not operating in the same place and like in good faith, and it's like making me angry. And then like Instagram was like, I don't feel like I'm getting anything out of this. Like I have like a compulsion when I'm standing somewhere to like check this thing, and I don't know that I'm receiving anything. And it comes back to like the shift, I think, from like social networking, which is about your friends, to social media, which is about like consuming a media product in the way that other media product exists. And that like transition has sort of changed the dynamics, I think, a lot.
Yeah, it's funny because come the new year, I guess we're in April now, but I was said I want to get off TikTok. I want to spend a lot less time on social media, on Instagram, TikTok, all the above. And I set the timer on my phone, so 30-minute blocks. And my sister like laughed in my face. She's 4 years younger than me. She introduced me to TikTok, and she was like, "You're never going to stick to that." The first week, I was really good. First 3 days, like week is generous to myself. Now I haven't turned it off, and still every time I get your 30 minutes is up, I used to hit 15 more minutes. Now I jump straight to like unlimit for the day. And it's horrible. And I've spent time off of it. I have the Hatch alarm clock. Like I've tried the nighttime routines where instead of scrolling mindlessly and getting like 100, you've been scrolling for too long notices, which are just annoying, first of all. I've tried it and I know how much better it makes me feel, like overall, in terms of rest, in terms of like well-being, happiness. But I feel this like overwhelming compulsion to constantly be on it. And it serves multiple purposes, like looking for inspiration, looking for something for work, looking for humor. There's so many different reasons I go to it, and I have a hard time breaking it.
This made me think of a grocery trip from this last week. We were at the grocery and we wanted to pick up crackers. We're looking at the cracker aisle and it's like, what kind of crackers you want to get? You can, like, there are some of these like very, like $1 per cracker type, like fancy cracker section. There's just like the run-of-the-mill name brand crackers. Looking around, I'm looking somewhere in the middle for something that's like more tasty but not like exorbitant. And Ryan goes like, what about like a good old-fashioned butter cracker? And I was like, you mean like Ritz? He's like, no, Ritz are dangerous. Like Ritz are, it's like all of a sudden it's like gone. It's too good. And then I was like, what about whole wheat Ritz? And he's like, that's interesting. Like a little bit less good, but still good.
A little more friction.
Noticeably less good. And upon a taste test, we were like, yeah, this is actually exactly right. Like good, but not like I cannot help myself. Like,
yeah.
Like I still have power in the relationship between me and the whole wheat Ritz.
Yeah.
Like, the first thing I thought of was like, it just needs to be a little less good, right? Like you need to just, I think I had a moment with Joey last year where I was like, I'm actually feeling like I don't like Instagram anymore. Like I find myself aware of diminishing returns in the moment, not just after the fact. I'm just like, I don't like, this isn't interesting. And in that sense, like if it were less compelling, like if TikTok's algorithm for you were less funny, just enough, you'd be like, okay, I'll go read my book.
Which you always hit a point where it was, right? We were talking earlier about like the chiropractor TikToks that I was watching a million of. Like at a certain point, I have no interest in that. I don't know why I could watch an hour of it, but still, like I could not turn it off. It was just like the cracking and crunching. There is something about it that I could not stop watching.
Like pimple popping and all of that
No,
when that
that
was
I
like a
can't do.
moment. Like it literally
I really
got a
can't do
TV
those.
show off of being like people just like obsessively like scrolling through an Instagram account, you know?
I actually blocked Dr. Pimple Popper because
No.
because I was like, if I see one more of this, I'm gonna vomit everywhere. It's so disgusting.
Not interested.
So I guess here's the question, right? Like we've talked about certainly some of the attachment that one can feel to the quote unquote treadmill. But I want to return back to the question, Claire, that you had posed of like, how bad is it? Like, is it like, yes, compulsion maybe does appear to be a common recurring thing. That's the whole thing about social media in general. People feel attached to it. But especially as people who are professionals in a sphere where like sometimes it just is a helpful fun fact that you've now learned. Like goodness knows I'm extremely not online. I'm like an internet recluse, I feel like. And yet like the idea of blueberry milk nails, like maybe that's actually a helpful metaphor for something. Is it so bad even for folks like us who use this professionally to have a little bit of this attachment to the treadmill?
I feel like it's twofold. I feel like the attachment to social media is bad. The attachment to the treadmill is more interesting. Even like if we separate the blueberry milk nails, the strawberry milk nails from the clean girl mob wife aesthetic. Clean girl mob wife is like an identifier. It's a personality type. It's like I now identify with this type of person, whoever that may be, and it starts to tell me something about myself or tell others something about myself. Blueberry milk nails are silly. There's something like frivolous about it. Like you do have, it is fun, and if you want to do it, I'm power to you. But there's something silly about it. Like it is a blue nail, and so you're not necessarily telling the world something about you by having blueberry milk nails in the same way you are if you're calling yourself a clean girl, a mob wife. Like that is telling something about something deeper inside of you in a way. And I think that's where it gets a little tricky. But do I think wearing a fur jacket, a faux fur jacket, let's say, is a bad thing? No. Like wear your fur jacket, wear your pretty trench coat, wear your tailored coat. That I don't think is bad. It's like when we ascribe it to our personality that maybe is murky water.
Yeah. I think it creates contradictions too, right? Like if you have like a generation that is talking about like anti-capitalism and like overconsumption and then is like purchasing like constantly to keep up with this treadmill of like over-consuming of like either Shein or like going out and buying, you know, the next like trend cycle wave or like fighting over Stanley Cups or whatever. Like it sort of like generates a conflict between what is the treadmill doing versus what is like at my personal center, you know?
Yeah, I mean, my my Trader Joe's mini tote is hanging on my door staring at me every day. And when it comes to Trader Joe's, I think coming from California, like it's had a cult following for a while now. And part of the reason for, and this might sound so cheesy, like part of the reason for buying it is because it reminds me of home and I love their products. And I also don't want to let something like the fear of being identified as a trend follower keep me from using this like dumb little bag. Um, I have a lot of, or I struggle a lot with this like, does it really matter what other people think of me? And are they really paying attention to me. And just to your question of like, then how do we navigate this, and what does this mean for work? I think it's about looking at it less extreme, at least for myself. Like, I know that I am going to be using apps like TikTok. I know that I am going to be looking at Instagram and what my friends post. But are there things that I can do and control in my experience that make it just a little bit easier and a little bit more enjoyable? Like, now when I want to share something, I only share it to the close friend story option, because these are people that like I want to be like knowing what's going on in my life. And there's the tactic of like blocking the accounts that you don't want to see, like Chloe blocks the pimple popper doctor or whoever. And having to sort of like reframe the experience is what has made it easier for me. And notifications off, or whatever you need to do to make it easier, I think the options are there. And rather than kind of like getting so upset with myself for opening TikTok again, it's sort of like I've kind of learned to take it as a moment to try and figure out how I can make it a little bit better, if that's making sense.
Yeah, it makes tons of sense. It's like in a time where across so many different categories and spaces, we are so sensitive to the meaning of things that one option is to just say less, do less, show less, or the other option, which seems more like what you've chosen, is to just constrain or confine how widely that whatever that thing is spread. That way you don't have to consider the broader ramifications of like, what is this saying? It's like, well, maybe it's not saying everything I mean it to, but at least it's not saying it to people beyond those which I want to say it, right? Or like, maybe those people will be more forgiving of whatever the context is of what it means now versus what it means 2 days from now, which could totally shift. And maybe that for our cringe conversation is cringe, but it's still safe and fine because I'm in a safer space. And it's just interesting how, if in a time where we have to be so aware of how other things are being seen or interpreted, that this is our source of control, is trying to be more choiceful about what we allow of ourselves to be put out in the world. She says on a podcast.
Well, that was a wrap-up corner. So an unannounced wrap-up corner. Retcon that. Now rewind and listen to Jess's last bit, and that was a wrap-up corner. I think we did it.
We did it.
Any final words, Chloe and Claire?
Wear your Trader Joe's tote to work next week. I want to see it loud and proud.
Yeah, Chloe, you better pull up in the fur coat, or I'm just gonna leave the office. Like, if you show up in a trench coat, I'm gonna be so pissed. I'm just gonna get up and leave.
I like my trench coat.
Even if it's 80 degrees.
I think the takeaway is everyone should just do what they want and what they like and what makes them happy. Because I'm saying this with my phone on a fake Yeti cup. Or it is a real Yeti cup, but it's a fake Stanley. And so, you do you.
Yeah. Critical Nonsense is a Sylvain production.
Brought to you by The Milk Company. We can make anything milk. Glass, oats, nails. You got it.
As always, we'd like to thank executive producer and aesthetician. Well, I can't say that. I sound drunk. Jess Vander.
God.
You're welcome. And while I'm here, I'll thank our special guests, Chloe Sutter and Claire Toy. Thank you for joining us on this show and being the tote bags and for jackets of our hearts. I will also, while I am here, thank sound engineer and our clean girl, Alex Contel.
We'd like to thank programming coordinator and volleyball basketball player Les Jacobs.
Thank you to our production crew and Ritz Crackers, Sarah Gilbert and Nora Mestrich.
And as always, thanks, Ellen.
Thanks, Ellen.
Special thanks to Ritz crackers. Those things
Honestly,
go down
though, it's just so good.
Like, peanut butter and jelly
on
a Ritz.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Yum.
Les Jacobs, I just have to say it because he cannot speak for himself right now, but I know that he is like a non-believer in the PB&J, and that is just a feud for another time.
How dare you?
I didn't know that. He's right outside. I'll say something.
Yeah, you can talk about. You'll be like, "What is with that?" And then he'll be like, "Yeah, I mean, it's not good." And then you'll be like, "Well, I disagree." And he'll be like, "You're wrong." And then you'll be at an impasse.
What's wrong with a nut and a fruit merged together amidst a witch?
I want to give a huge thank you to Chloe because no matter what I share and no matter what I say, I feel like she is always there and ready to receive the TikToks or receive the tweets or...
Heck yeah. And I'd like to give a special thanks right back to Claire for sending me the TikToks and for always be willing to get into the conversations with me. Unless it's about Onika Burgers, because that one I could pass up on forever.
And all I have to say is Onika Burgers.
I don't know what's happening.
What are you saying?
Exactly.
I can explain later.
At a later date, everyone go look up Onika Burgers.
What deep internet cut is this?
It's brand new, straight off the treadmill, fresh yesterday, or 2 days ago, April 5th.
Straight off the trend grill. Am I right?
Ooh.
Ooh. Oh.
Well,
on that note.
Yeah. A potato flew around my room.
I'll see myself out.
Joey.
A potato flew around my... Well, love you, mean it. Bye.
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 Basically, Onika Burgers. Really quickly, Pop Base tweeted a photo of Kris Jenner and a Kris Jenner drawing that Northwest had drawn. That was amazing. A fan account of Nicki Minaj said, "Wow, she ate." And then another fan account commented, of a K-pop account, commented like, she equals Onika, 8 equals burger. And Onika is the name of Nicki Minaj. And burgers, they're just trying to say that she like loves burgers and is like hating on Nicki. But everyone's been saying Onika Burgers.